Today we're going to look at changing the oil filter and under the hood, the air filter, oil filter, perhaps some fuel filters, do some rudimentary things to a 300D turbo. I just bought this one for my daughter and I haven't done the basic things to it, so we're going to look at some rudimentary things under the hood.
Where do we start?
Well, we start with opening the hood, which is a latch right inside the door there. And if we go around to the front, you'll notice that on these 123 bodies, there's another little latch that pops out for you right there. So what you need to do is pull that latch out, and then of course you can raise the hood. Now, that's the initial position of the hood, but actually we're going to be working under there, and Mercedes mechanics must be old and their backs hurt because the Mercedes engineers designed these hoods so that they'll go all the way up if you know how to raise them.
So that's normally at like a 45-degree angle.
Normally that hood sits about there, and if you were just going to check the oil or fluid or something and not work on the car, that would be the position that would be normal just for raising it. But if you intend to spend any time under the hood, you really need to raise it up all the way, and it's the only car, I'm sure there are other cars that do this, but certainly the 123 body does this. If we look over here on this hinge, there's a little catch right there, and sometimes we have to move the hood up and down a little bit, but if we push that little catch down, you see it's spring loaded right there. If we push it down and then gently push up on the hood actually continues to go up, and then finally it locks in another position. Each one of those hood pins have another position that locks the hood in such a way that it's all the way up. Now, isn't that convenient?
Sure is.
So now I don't bang my head, and I can work on the car without being so stooped over all the time. It's wonderful. Before we change the oil and filter and do some basic things, let's take a walk under this hood and just point out some of the basic things that exist under there. Just a moment, let me go get a pointer here. Let's start on the driver's side over here, and we'll sort of walk our way from this fender to that. If we start right underneath against the firewall, there's the fuse box, and we'll come back to that and open it in a moment, but that's where the fuses are contained for this 123 body, and they're very conveniently located, very easy to get to, very well marked. This is what we call the master cylinder for the brake system, and right in front of it well, that's the booster, called the booster for power brakes, and right there is the master cylinder, what we call the master cylinder for the brakes. It's the thing that of course operates the brake system, the hydraulic brake system, and the brake fluid is applied right here inside this little reservoir. You can see that the fluid level on this is right where it should be. I don't know if you can tell, but the fluid level is right there, and it's just at the point, and there's a little label that says max, and there's another one down here that says min. So that's the correct fluid level on this brake fluid. Of course, that's the top of the engine. If we move a little bit in the front of the engine to the left, this device right here, this mechanical device that's linked by this piece of linkage, is actually part of the cruise control system. It's a gearbox that holds the speed. So by this lever right here, when the cruise is engaged, it holds the speed. If we move around here a little bit, this device here with the belt on the front is a power steering pump. It's the thing that pumps the fluid under pressure to the gearbox. The gearbox is actually located down here that turns the power steering for the car. In other words, that's the thing that applies the force to the tie rod ends and pitman arm in such a way that the car steers. While we're under here, let's just check the brake fluid, or I'm sorry, the power steering fluid. And you know, before I start, I can see right away I'm going to be working on some of these things, and I'd like to put some gloves on my hands. I don't like to get them dirty. For years and years I worked without latex gloves, but I've really become partial to latex gloves. So let me put a pair on and just show you where they are. For years I've used latex gloves. I bought these at Home Depot. You can get them at any hardware store. These brand happen to be Stanley. Most of them are lightly powdered. They come 100 in a box for, perhaps they cost a nickel or a dime a piece. I don't know. They're about that price, but they've got light powder inside. They're almost just exactly like the physicians use, and it really keeps the dirt from underneath your fingernails. And all the mechanics that I know these days use them. It makes the cleanup so much easier, and because they fit so tightly, of course, you can get real good sensitivity for nuts and bolts. So I've always got a pair of latex gloves on when I'm working on a car. If we look at this power steering fluid, what we want to make sure is just that the level is up near the top, and you can see that it is.
Are there any marks on there to tell?
No, I don't believe there are. You just fill it up close to the top. Power steering fluid, it just uses automatic transmission fluid. I can see that it's a little bit down. I just got the car. Let's just top it off. I've got some Valvoline automatic transmission fluid here. It's got Dexton 3 Mercron. That was the spec for General Motors and Ford on there. Practically any of it, I prefer a good quality brand. Valvoline is certainly a good brand. There are many others, but we just add a little bit near the top is where we want it. So that's perhaps within a ½ inch of the top. If it gets too low, it'll start to squeal, and it'll definitely make a racket when the power steering fluid gets too low. What did I do with that little window? The power steering pump, it's run by a belt. It's got a couple of hoses on there. One of them is a high pressure hose. You can see the fitting on there is crimped, and it's very high pressure. The fluid is under extreme pressure when it feeds that gearbox. When it returns, the pressure is not so high, so you can just see a clamp. So this is a low pressure line. That's a high pressure line. Behind the power steering pump, and we're going to get to this today, is the main fuel filter. Right underneath there, you can see it. If I point to it, it's perhaps 4 or 5 inches long and 2 or 3 inches in diameter. It almost looks like a baby oil filter, but it's the main fuel filter to filter the diesel fuel. Underneath the power steering pump is the air conditioner compressor on the 123 300D turbo. This particular one uses an R4 General Motors compressor. In those days, at least when this car was, and so they used a GM compressor, and over the years they've used different types of compressors for the AC. Behind the fuel filter and the power steering pump, this piece of equipment right here is called the fuel injection pump, or just the injection pump. It's used to inject the diesel into the cylinders, and you can see a line. There's from each of the cylinders back to the injection pump. So this is a 5-cylinder engine, and it's an inline 5-cylinder engine. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injection lines. Together, this whole thing is frequently referred to as the rack, and the rack is just the set of lines. You see that they're very well stabilized by this set of brackets, if you will, because they're under extreme pressure, and they feed the diesel fuel into each one of the cylinders in a very, very precise manner.
So it runs from approximately here back to here.
Yes.
Is the fuel pump.
The injection pump goes from here back to here. And of course, behind the injection pump is the oil filter canister, and we'll be replacing that today. The throttle linkage, obviously, right here, and there's some heater hoses. It kind of gets busy under here. There's a little heater hose here, a little heater hose here, and there's a whole vacuum distribution system under here that we'll talk about later. This is the dipstick for the oil, and we'll be looking at that later too. One more thing here, there's a reservoir. The reservoir, this particular reservoir, it lifts right out of there very easily, so you can see it. That reservoir is the reservoir for the windshield washer pump. So the little washer that squirts water up on the windshield to wash it, that water is contained in this reservoir. And if I can get it back in there we go. And of course, that's the lid for it. And there's a little washer pump down at the very bottom right here, that little bitty pump that pumps the water.
And how full should that be? Is that about right?
It is about half full right now. You can fill that up all the way to the top. We need to add a little bit to that. There's common washer fluid that's available in any auto parts store. All it is a little mixture of water and, it's like antifreeze, but it doesn't have the petroleum base that antifreeze has, but it's made so that it doesn't freeze. Some kind of an alcohol-based product such that it won't freeze in under cold climate conditions. There's a little, of course the radiator is right across the top, but right next to the radiator is an oil cooler. You can see lines. The diesels have a tendency, of course, to generate a lot of heat by their very nature, the engine does, and they need an oil cooler. It's got a line on the top and the bottom. We can only see the top one very clearly right here, but oil is constantly flowing through that little cooler that runs from here to here. So that is an oil cooler. It's just a little radiator. And by flowing oil through that radiator, we can cool the engine oil down, and that helps the entire engine run cooler than it would otherwise. You can see that the source of that oil is back here where this oil filter is. It's connected to that oil filter. You follow that line all the way back. So the feed and the return is from the bottom of that oil filter. Now let's go around and look on the other side of the engine. We can't see that much, but on this side of the engine, the very top, we have an air filter housing, and we'll take that off and replace that air filter today. And then underneath that air filter, there's a turbocharger. All a turbocharger really is a fan that forces the air that goes into the engine to go in there under pressure. So it's just a fan that force feeds air into the intake manifold. It really improves the performance and the horsepower of the engine. And of course the intake and exhaust manifolds are on this side of the engine. This little device right here is called an EGR, an exhaust gas recirculation valve. What it does is it allows some of the it's an emission device that allows some of the exhaust gases under certain conditions to be recycled through the engine and reburned. Of course, the battery is back here. We want to be very careful with that battery and not put the wrong type in there. You can see that it actually has kind of a low profile, and when that battery is replaced, a frequent mistake made by folks that work on some owners that do their own work is if they put a battery in there that's a little too tall, and you can see that the positive and negative terminal of that battery are right there, and if the battery is too tall and the wrong battery is used, one that'll fit in that hole but is the wrong battery for this car, and those terminals are too high, it touches on the hood. And of course when those two terminals touch on the hood, the hood is metal and it's a conductor, and it arcs across there and it'll just burn that paint right off, and so on the outside you have a big, essentially a fire that went across there and just boil the paint between those two terminals. So be very careful.